Okay, and we are live. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to the Muslim Wealth Club webinar. We have a absolutely exciting and amazing webinar planned for today with a dear friend of mine, a renowned scholar, and we're really going to get into um, I think some really inspirational and some really important things to understand as an entrepreneur, being Muslim, and what that means, and how do you balance the spirituality, family, as well as your professional career all together. And so I'm going to go ahead and not spend too much time with you guys because I know you want to get to the Sheikh really quickly. So just a quick introduction. Sheikh Joe Bradford is based in Houston. He is a renowned scholar. He speaks all over the country. He has a reputation for being an amazing scholar who is well versed in the financial world, the Islamic world, and one of the things that distinguishes him is that he is actually worked as a professional in the financial industry. So, he's able to relate in many ways some of the struggles that we have in the corporate world, and as well as some of the uniqueness that we have as Muslims. I know that for myself, being a Muslim has sometimes held me out of certain circles, such as hanging out and networking in bars and clubs, which is part of corporate life. So I'm going to encourage questions. We have our Q&A running, and go ahead and ask any questions that you have, and inshallah I will raise those questions with the Sheikh, and let's go ahead and get into it. So Sheikh, I am going to switch you on. Let me do that right now. Present to everybody. All right, Sheikh Joe Bradford. I won't be able to give justice to a good introduction, so why don't you start just with a little bit of background, your studies. I know you've got a very impressive resume, your background. If you could start with that, that would be great.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Naeem, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to speak to you all. I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions and your concerns, and for us to basically just, conversate and talk about the issues that are important to us. About my background, I have been interested in business and finance since I was young. And then after accepting Islam in the early 90s, while in high school, I then found out about the Islamic finance industry and started to try to specialize in that area and understand it. As I finished high school and I had started college. While I was in college, I received a scholarship to the University of Medina. And in 1999, I went to Medina and I studied there. I was in the College of Islamic Law, Kulliyat al-Sharia. And then I was the first American accepted to the graduate program of law in the university's history. Alhamdulillah, I was able to finish that, and I finished my master's degree in 2009. And at the same time, I had been working because I was married, I had a family. And so while I was in Medina, I worked as a translator interpreter. And then from there, that branched off into working in banking and finance, building upon both my skills in the Arabic and the English language, as well as my interests in Islamic finance, and then my background in Islamic law. And so I've been working in the areas of banking and finance for close to a decade now. Much of that has been institutional with international banks. I have done some consulting for business consortiums. I am currently also an advisor to several private investors. I run a private wealth advisory, and I also work as a structuring advisor for a real estate development company out of DC. And previously I've been in both in Islamic and conventional banks. And so that's helped me gain insight into the industry and really understand not only the structuring and the products and the tools and the vehicles that are used, but also the difficulties that a person working in the corporate environment can come across. It was funny. I used to get questions all the time from coworkers over, group chat. Hey, tell me, we've got to re-up on our 401k. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. It's like, okay, that's not exactly the most appropriate time or place for the question, but I would try to help people out as much as I can, because I think that a lot of these issues can be daunting at first outset. And so it's important that we learn the fundamentals that go into them and really understand, not necessarily the do's and don'ts dogmatically, but we understand the ethical basis and the foundational principles that go into business, finance, and earning a living.
That's great. So, Sheikh, I'm going to ask you, I think a good place to follow up with that is kind of let's talk a little bit about the history and the legacy of finance, wealth and finance achievement in Islam. And I say that with a little question in the back of my head, which is always that many times chasing wealth is sometimes seen in a negative way in the Muslim circles. So can you maybe talk a little bit about that and explain the pursuit of wealth, health, spirituality, how they all work together, and historically, what does that look like? Maybe if you have some examples.
Great. That's an excellent question. It's one that I come across a lot. I think there's this there's an overbearing sentiment in some circles of the Muslim community that being wealthy is somehow wrong, or that seeking after wealth is somehow wrong. However, when we look in the Quran, we can see that one of the commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, He commanded us to seek wealth. He also praised seeking wealth. He also considered seeking wealth to be on par with other acts of worship in Islam. He also reminded us not to forget our wealth. So, for example, we know that Jum'ah is one of the greatest acts of worship in Islam. It's the Eid of the week, and we're to every week go out and be reminded. Allah says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha nudiya lis-salati min yawm al-jum'ati fas'au ila dhikrillahi wa dharul bay'." O you who believe, when the call to prayer has been given for the day of Jum'ah, then go out to the remembrance of Allah and leave off sales. And so we're commanded that we leave off our business and then we go to pray. فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And when the prayer is finished, then disperse throughout the earth and seek of God's favor. وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. And remember God much so that you can be successful. Now notice, we're not like other faith communities in which it's considered a sin to work on our quote-unquote holy day. So we work in before Jum'ah, we get off for Jum'ah, we pray, we remember Allah, and then we go we're commanded right after Jum'ah. فَانْتَشِرُوا, that's a command. Go and disperse throughout the earth. Seek the favor that your Lord has put out there. And then always remember, while you're doing business, while you're at your job, remember Allah much, and that's what will make you successful. So it's this balance of the success just doesn't come from prayer. The success comes from remembering God while we're in the state of doing business and seeking after what He's given us. There's another reminder. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Allah told the Prophet ﷺ, do not forget your portion of this world. So it was not, sometimes we think of the Prophet ﷺ as being poor. He said, Allah has opened up for me the treasures of the East and the West. So had he wanted to, he could have had anything. But it was how he even though he had access to that wealth, it was how he used that wealth, which was meaningful. But having wealth, if we look at the 10 that were promised paradise, Abu Bakr was one of the wealthiest of the Sahaba. Umar was one of the wealthiest of the Sahaba. Uthman was one of the wealthiest of the Sahaba. Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah was one of the wealthiest of the Sahaba. Sa'ad was one of the wealthiest of the Sahaba until the end of the 10. And they all used their wealth, and their wealth is what helped build an early community and make it strong. So we have, I think, when I think about this, one story always comes to mind, and it's a personal story. When I was studying in Medina, I had a very good friend who was a classmate, Mohammed Shaheen from the Maldives. And Mohammed Shaheen had the most beautiful voice. He had the most amazing qira'ah. Every time our Quran teacher would come in, or our tafsir teacher would ask somebody to read the verses for the day, everybody in the class would elect for him to read it because his voice was so beautiful, mashallah. So I asked him, we were sitting after class one day, conversing. I told him, I don't know anything about the Maldives. I'm an American, I'm not very good at geography. Tell me, what is the Maldives? Where is it? How did you become Muslim? He said, well, the Maldives is a Muslim majority country. It's in the Indian Ocean. And, we've been Muslim for a very, very long time. And I forget exactly the length of time that he mentioned, but he said that it was in the early years of Islam that the people became Muslim. I said, well, how was that? He said, well, Muslim merchants came to the Maldives doing business. And they were honest, and they were good people, and they gave good deals, and they helped the people that were there. And the king of the Maldives was so impressed in dealing with a certain Muslim businessman from Yemen that he asked him, why are you so honest while you're doing business? Why do you give us good deals? Why do you want to create relationships? And he said, well, our Prophet ﷺ was a merchant, and he did business for his wife, and he was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy. And so I have to be this way. This is who I am. This is who I should be. And the king accepted Islam based on that, and then he ordered everyone in the Maldives to accept Islam. So the Maldives is pretty much a 99% Muslim country because of that. And so, notice this. Now I'm speaking with a 20-year-old Qari of the Quran living in Medina who, is affected by the good character of a Muslim businessman that happened to have visited his country hundreds or thousands, hundreds of years before.
So that reminds me of one of my favorite hadiths. When I broke away from my corporate background and got into entrepreneurship, I somehow came across this hadith, and now I've actually printed it out, and I try to look at it, every day, which is, I don't remember exactly, so I'm just going to paraphrase it.
Uh-huh.
An honest businessman will be raised among the martyrs. And that to me is just so profound, because the first impression I get from that hadith is, how in the world could a businessman chasing money possibly be equal to a martyr? But as you crack the surface of that and you get into the layers, there's some real deep spirituality there. Can you talk, I know you know that hadith, can you talk about that, which is the balance between the business and spirituality based on what you were just saying?
Yeah, definitely. The exact phrase of that hadith escapes me. I will have to look it up. But the sentiment and the idea there is found in many other texts. Take for example, in the end of Surah Al-Muzammil, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet ﷺ to stand at night in prayer, right? And then he tells him, نِصْفَهُ أَوْ انْقُصْ مِنْهُ قَلِيلًا أَوْ زِدْ عَلَيْهِ وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, that pray for half of the night, or a third, or a little less, and recite the Quran melodiously, right? And then he mentions that he knows that there are some who are busy throughout the day, doing business. وَآخَرُونَ يَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَبْتَغُونَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. There are those who are busy throughout the day doing business, seeking God's bounty. وَآخَرُونَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And others out there fighting in God's path. فَقَرَؤُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. So therefore, when you're reciting at night, recite what is easy for you. So even because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I'm considering your business that you're doing throughout the day, earning a halal living, to be equal to those who are out striving in God's path. So at least pray a little bit at night, but take it easy on yourselves. It's consideration for that, and equivacy between those things. You have the Prophet ﷺ, for example, saying, hadith is in Bukhari, that أطيب ما أكلتم من كسب اليد, that the best of what you can eat is what your own hands have earned. Excuse me. And he alayhi salatu wasalam, in many other hadith of Abu Hurairah, he talked about the prophets and the messengers having forms of employment, forms of business. Zakaria alayhi salam was a carpenter, and Musa alayhi salam worked as an employee in Madian. And the prophet, he said, there was never a prophet except that he raised sheep. And they said, even you? He said, yes, even I, as a young man, I would raise sheep for money that I would take from the people of Mecca. I would take their sheep outside of Mecca and raise sheep. So you have this idea of at-tajir as-saduq, the truthful merchant is a person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed, either saying he's with the ranks of the martyrs or the ranks of the angels. But being a truthful merchant is difficult because you have to maintain a certain level of honesty that sometimes people would think, they associate business with kind of getting over on one another. But sometimes you have to take the hit yourself so that you can maintain you can maintain your level of ethics and also allow yourself the ability to be blessed in the wealth that will come after that. Jabir ibn Abdullah, this hadith is in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed, that he went to purchase a camel from a man. And he asked the man, how much do you want for the camel? The man said, I want 300. He started, sizing it up as one of us would do with a car, right? We'd kick the tires and, drive it a little bit. So he started to look at the camel and he said, no, you know what? This is actually worth 400. I'll give you 400. The man said, okay, I accept. He said, let me take another look. He took another look. Actually, it's closer to 600. I accept, fine. I've sold you the camel. Let me give it another look. Gives it a third look. Actually, it's closer to 700, maybe 8. I'll give you 8, and that's my final offer. He said, I accept. What? Are you crazy? Yeah. Why would you? I started at 300. You're giving me 800?
Every car dealer would love this guy.
He said the Prophet ﷺ took an oath from me that I would be honest with everyone, with every Muslim, and honest with everyone that I did business with.
MashaAllah. Let's talk about how all of this relates to the budding entrepreneurs in our community, or the folks that want to get onto the entrepreneurial path. And currently they are working. They could be working in a corporate environment. They could be working in a blue-collar job, whatever it is. But I think people who are drawn to our group have a certain yearning for that. Some of them have already started. Some of them want to start. We're living in an age and time where we're all so busy. We have this never-ending list, and we just can't make it through the day just getting the basic 3 things, the critical things that we need to get done. What's your observations, recommendation, advice for the soccer mom or the soccer dad or corporate dad or whoever who has a full-time job, has to support his family, and is doing his prayers and going to the mosque and doing all of these things that life puts us in front of, and wants to get into a good Islamic entrepreneurial path? How do you struggle? I mean, how do you manage your days and your ventures and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I think that we have to take into consideration the value of time first and foremost, and we also have to reorient what it means to be wealthy. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that لَيْسَ الْغِنَى عَنْ كَثْرَةِ الْعَرَضِ وَلَكِنَّ الْغِنَى غِنَى الْقَلْبِ. Wealth is not having lots of things. It's not about stuff, but wealth is wealth of the heart. And so when you take that into consideration and your own, emotional, mental comfort and stability, you have to realize that every single thing that you do, if you're a soccer mom that's out there trying to do a business on the side, you have to realize, and you have to you have to tell yourself why you're doing something, and what is, and when you spend time on something, have an express purpose, have an intention, as the Prophet ﷺ, every action is by intention. And so if you don't start off with an intention of why you're doing something, well, I think I want to start a business, so let me try. No, you should be saying to yourself, this is how much money I want to raise this year, or I'm going to raise this year, and this is what I'm going to do it. And when you start off with a pure intention and you've reoriented what it means to be wealthy, I'm not necessarily starting that second business because I want to, Scrooge McDuck and swim in, gold coins and shower myself in dollar bills. That's not realistic. But I want to be able to provide for my kids that I'm taking to soccer practice. I want to be able to, meet a few of my bills every month without having to even think about it. And so what that does for you is that allows you to be motivated by things which are greater than the physical. They're greater than just material wealth, but you're motivated by the wealth of your heart. And I would say, secondly, it's super important to have a mentor. Time is valuable, and if we as individuals are going to have to go out there and learn everything on our own and make the same mistakes and repeat the mistakes that others have made, we're wasting time. And that means we're wasting value. And in the end, we're not building wealth through those activities. So if you have the opportunity to go through a mentorship course like the one that you've been talking about, Naeem, then it's essential for you to join something like that. Because I know that one of the greatest life lessons that I've been given when I was a teenager is that an elder in the mosque came to me, and he kind of saw that I was, falling into some things that nothing bad, but just in my approach to life. And he pulled me to the side. He said, I want to give you some advice. Learn from the mistakes of other people. Make their mistakes yours, and you'll never have to make a mistake personally. So whenever you see somebody doing something, think of it as, I've made that mistake as well. What would I do to better myself after that? So you don't have to waste the time of falling into the mistake, then crawling out of the mistake, then correcting it. And he said, bank on those people that have made mistakes before, either by observing them or speaking with them. And so it's extremely important for us to have a mentor. So I personally have 5 different people that I go to with pretty much everything. I have a person who, excuse me, I have a business mentor, I have an academic mentor, I have spiritual mentor, I have emotional mentors, and I have a mentor who is probably doesn't even know he's a mentor. He's just a great friend that I'm able to bounce things off of. But he's my friendship mentor, and he kind of keeps me balanced. And one of my friends, I actually took that from another friend of mine who says he calls them his personal board of directors. So it's extremely important to, if you have the opportunity to be mentored in doing business, then you have to jump on that opportunity. Excuse me.
I think that is awesome advice. I want to recap some of these things because these are really just pearls of wisdom that I think I personally, can benefit from, and I'm sure anybody who watches this webinar can benefit from. So, a couple of things: have a vision. If you're going to start and take a step towards building an empire in your entrepreneurial journey, like you said, don't just say, well, I want to make money. Well, how much do you want? In other words, if you don't have a plan, you're going to fail. And it's interesting, yes, Sheikh Bradford, that this is echoed in every good course. This is not just a quote unquote Muslim thing. This is just a way of learning. Every single teacher course that I've done, I'm sure same thing for you, but they always start with, we're not going to start with talking about the first step. We're first going to talk about the vision. And
right.
They build, there's recommendations to build a vision board and visualize, and sometimes you think, oh, it's fluff and this and that. Well, it's not. And so I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of have a plan, have a vision. What are you trying to accomplish this year? Couple of other things that really hit home with me, which is you talked about having a mentor. So I'll just share this with everybody. Sheikh Bradford and I are friends now. We've been friends for many years. Sheikh Bradford is actually on my board for my Islamic Sharia finance company called Halal Sky. And so I think that rings really, really well, because when I have questions of Sharia and what's Sharia, what's not, and can I take a loan for this or that, I'm not the expert, and I can't be the expert in everything. And that's when I turn to Sheikh Bradford and say, hey, let's talk about this. And he gives me valuable advice along with others. And it's interesting. So, he does the same thing. And I think that's really, really good, is you need to have a mentor. So there's a lot of people within our Muslim Wealth Club who are selling, who are doing very well, and they're very open and they want to support. So, the first step is take action, put your questions down in there, and start building your own personal board of directors, like the Sheikh said. So lots of good stuff there. Sheikh, I want to ask you a little bit about continuing with the practicality of starting this entrepreneurial journey for the soccer mom and a corporate guy, or blue collar guy, whatever. Can we talk a little bit about what are the habits, what are the practical habits of some of the successful Muslim entrepreneurs that that you practice yourself on a day-to-day basis, or regular basis, that lead to success?
I think that there's a couple that come to mind. One of the habits is time management and understanding the value of time. And I think we talked a little bit about that before.
Yeah, a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, a lot of people struggle with that, and I think that it's important to find what's right for you. I mean, some people, a friend of mine just the other day, people were saying, how do you remain effective at work? He said, I use the Pomodoro method, which is I work for 45 minutes,
yep,
and then I take 15 minutes and I do all of my emails, I check social media, I get a cup of coffee, I rest, and then I'm back at it at the head of the hour. Some people don't do that. They single task and they drill through whatever they're doing for a couple of hours. Other people have different methods, but it's important to find what's right for you. And I think that there are a lot of different ways to be effective. And it'll take some time, and you'll have to test. You'll have to test a few different methods and find what's right for you. But I think that being successful, really, that's one of the things that it hinges on. Another big part of being successful is excuse me, is another big part of being successful is self-accountability. And Umar radiallahu anhu, every morning after Fajr, he would finish his dhikr, and then he would speak to himself, and he would say, Umar, today, or he would speak to his soul. He would say to his soul, oh soul, this is Umar. Today we're going into business. We can make it all or we can break it all. But if you don't cooperate with me, then we're going to lose everything. And we have a lot to gain at the end of the day, but we also have a lot to lose. And so he would use this effective, a muhasabah, the self-accountability, to really think to himself, okay, what am I doing today, and what do I want to accomplish? And in the end, this all goes back to that issue of intention, of what am I intending by, excuse me, what am I intending by going into business at all? I mean, I know hundreds of people that go to work every single day, sit in a cubicle, find themselves unhappy, wondering why their health is waning, wondering why their wealth is waning, wondering why their relationships aren't going well. And it all starts with the fact that they're doing something robotically, without an intention and without understanding, without a vision behind their life. There's no problem working in a cubicle and going to a corporate job. That's great. But if you're doing it just to get the money at the end of the day, and not saying to yourself, I'm in this company because I need to gain certain skills, I need to I need to provide for my family, and consciously doing that, then you're losing out. You're basically becoming a drone that's just working, an automaton for someone else. Another thing is and I think it's important for Muslim entrepreneurs in being successful, is do not let yourself be shamed into thinking that leveraging your connections in the Muslim community is somehow bad or disingenuous or exploitative. And what do I mean by that? I was once at a job, and there was a Muslim who was in a managerial position in another department, and he looked really sad one day. So I went and spoke to him. So what's going on? He says, man, one of the other managers, I'm hiring right now. I have a few open positions. One of the other managers, he said to me, hey, Muhammad, is this guy that you're hiring going to be another Muslim? And he made me feel really bad for that. And I said, listen, that same guy only hires white guys like himself from Alabama. The other manager, who's a lady in her 50s, only hires other women in her 50s. The other manager, who's of another ethnicity, only hires people that are. I said, is that because they're doing it on purpose, or is that because that's who their social network revolves around? That's the people they know, their friends, their connections, their family members. I said, so don't be ashamed because you're a Muslim that you're relying upon your Muslim community. The same thing with doing business. Never be ashamed that you're setting up if you're selling products and you're setting up a stall after Jummah at a mosque. That's great. You know what? I wish more Muslims would be out there with stalls after Jummah, because I don't want to have to go to a restaurant. I don't want to have to go to a store. I would rather be able to benefit my community immediately after Jummah than have to walk, drive all the way to Kroger, walk inside. If I'm going to pay, a little bit more to buy from a fruit stand outside of the masjid, I'd rather do that because I know that the money's staying in my community. This idea, when I just came back from Umrah, I took a group, we went for Umrah, alhamdulillah. We stopped in Medina first and we went to Mecca. While we were in Mecca, we were driving through Mina. And there was a verse of Quran that was written on one of the walls in like very large, beautiful calligraphy. Laysa alaykum junahun an tabtaghu fadlan min rabbikum. It's a portion of a verse. There is no harm upon you to seek the bounty from your Lord. Now, what is, somebody said, hey, what is that verse? What is that Arabic on the wall over there say? And I said, it says there's no harm on you of seeking God's bounty. Or the bounty that comes from your Lord. So they said, well, why would it be there? I said, well, that verse was revealed about Hajj because many people had become Muslim, and they said Hajj is the penultimate pillar of Islam. It is the once in a lifetime journey. And the Prophet ﷺ has set a precedent of invalidating and falsifying the actions of the people of ignorance, the Jahili actions that the people were doing before Islam, taking Hajj back to the mannerisms and the principles of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So they said to themselves, maybe we shouldn't do business during Hajj because maybe we're doing something which is from the times of ignorance. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't answer them, Allah answered them. There is no harm on you, even in Hajj, even in an entire pillar of Islam, for you to seek bounty from your Lord. So we have, sometimes we have in this community, it's like we think that, that leveraging our network as Muslims is somehow disingenuous. And I think that's not correct from a religious standpoint. And we can't build real strength and wealth and social influence in our community unless we do so. And there's a history in the United States of communities, doing the same. So it's extremely important for us to keep in mind those things we mentioned before about at-Tajir Saduq, the honest merchant, and not, when I come to a Muslim, I shouldn't be gouging them for price, right? But I also shouldn't always be seeking the Muslim brother discount, right? Because I have to take in consideration that even if there is, I'm paying, go back to the fruit stand example, even if I'm paying, 5 cents more per pound, the guy saved me a trip to the store. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's a very basic example to kind of accentuate the fact that we do have to invest in those who are investing in us. And when we invest in ourselves, then we, as a friend of mine says, when the water rises, all boats go up.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Do you want to talk a little bit about Sharia and just the finance world? I think there's a lot of, and I know that by itself can be like 5 webinars, but just for, again, thinking about the entrepreneur who's getting off the ground, who may be thinking about leverage, who may be thinking about taking a loan to do this or that, just at a really high level. Can you talk about Sharia, finance, riba, and loans, and what's kind of the general consensus and your understanding of that?
So, it's a tricky subject at times when we talk about individual methods of finance. Generally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. God has permitted sales and has forbidden riba. And riba is, any increase on wealth for wealth, wealth now for more wealth later. But the important thing to remember is that that doesn't extend to all forms of finance, and it doesn't extend to everything that may be considered interest as an accounting term. So say for example, you may go to buy a car, and the person who's selling you the car says, okay, cash price is 10,000, right? And the credit price is 15,000 over the next 2 years, and this is the interest rate. Well, why are you charging an interest rate when you're telling me that I'm going to pay a static price at the end of 2 years? Well, because it's an accounting term to tell himself how much profit he's making off of extending you the ability to use that car over 2 years. Not that he's charging you for loaning you any money, because he's not loaning you any money. He's selling you a car, and you're taking the car up front with a mere down payment. So you give, let's say, for example, you put $3,000 down on a used car, and then you're going to pay 15 over 2 years. You're basically taking something with the value of 15 now for only 3,000. So, excuse me, the business person has to be able to profit. And so I guess my point here is, every time you hear the word interest, don't immediately say to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm falling into haram. Every time you deal with another business person and they start talking about profit, don't think that profit is necessary, that profit has to be something haram. Otherwise, I have to be super careful. What you should be going into doing business with, is the principle that God has permitted all things unless they are forbidden. Not God has forbidden all things unless they are permitted. There's 2 different things.
So not everything is haram?
So no, not everything is haram. And I think this there's a certain hysteria that we kind of get into, and because obviously we're afraid of going into the haram and falling into the haram, and at times, if at times we're even allowed to use the haram when there is an absolute, dire necessity, something right, which is life-threatening. So we should stop thinking in absolutes when we think about this stuff. And I think as well that, as far as Islamic finance, a lot of it's built on equity, a lot of it's built on partnerships, and by creating a community and by networking with each other And I think as well, leveraging things like Halal Sky and the allowances that are made by the Jobs Act that allow for crowdfunding, that we can build wealth in the Muslim community without ever having to go and take a working capital loan, and without ever having to go into things which are doubtful. But what it takes is two things. It takes community, number one, and number two, it takes community that's built upon a circle of trust. And we can only do that by getting to know each other, by communicating with each other, and by exemplifying the honesty of the Prophet ﷺ in doing business.
This is an example of some of the complexity for the everyday layman like myself to understand what is permissible, what is not, and it kind of gets into the gray area. So Sheikh Bradford is a wonderful resource for these kind of things. And like I was saying earlier, I turned to him when I got to talk about, can I take a loan from Amazon? You know, Amazon, now that I'm selling pretty well, Amazon offers loans directly because, you know, they're trying to add more and more services to you. Should you take that loan? Is obviously there's interest on there. Is that interest qualified as halal or haram? And things get very, very complex, at least for me. And this is a gray area where guys like Sheikh Bradford are there. And we can leverage each other's strength, exactly as the Sheikh is saying, to raise the question and say, here's a scenario, Sheikh, what do you think? Or so-and-so, you know, what do you think? And we can learn from each other. So I know you recently just launched, and you're pretty active socially on the web, but you recently launched MuslimMoneyGuide.com.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's live now. Okay, and that's where that's a channel and a portal where you offer some of these consulting type services like estate planning, financial services, etc. You want to talk about that a little bit? I think a lot of us could probably use some of those services.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say, you know, you mentioned the ability to ask questions. You know, I am very active online. I'm on Reddit occasionally. I kind of log in once a week and check my messages and see the posts. I have MuslimMoneyGuide.com, which is meant to be an independent third-party source for Muslims to understand about everything that has to do with Islam and money. And then I have JoeBradford.net. JoeBradford.net is my personal site where I blog, and I've got some resources there. One of the things that I have on there is a question and answer portal. And so you can ask a question with your name and your email address that's sent to me, or you can ask it anonymously. But it will, when you use that question and answer portal, it will email it directly to me. And I try to get around to that, you know, 2-3 times a week. And if I don't know the answer, I will try to direct you to resources that have the answers for you. Or I may even leverage my network of people to answer questions for you. Now, if the question that you ask me is readily available on the internet through a Google search, something like, what's the second chapter of the Quran called, right? I probably won't answer that question. Right? But
Right.
if you ask me questions that have to do with my area of expertise, then I'm definitely going to get back to you, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. I have a third, one of my businesses that will be launching soon is My Wasiya, and that is it will be the only web-based Sharia-compliant Islamic estate planning tool available for Muslims in North America. And so we're looking forward to a launch right now. If you want more information about that, or if you want, to get an idea of the things that I've been asked, you can go to joebradford.net, and that really has links to all of my other sites and all of my resources. Excuse me. Another thing that I've done, Naeem, is I've actually been following the questions that I get over the years, and recording them and looking at kind of the causes and the mistakes that people fall into and the things that they ask about. And I found that a lot of the things that people ask about fundamentally go back to 7 principles or 7 rules. And so I compiled those in a PDF and I put them on my website. So if you go to joebradford.net and sign up, you'll get the free PDF, which will have the 7 rules for financial success, and that will save you a lot of time in having to ask questions. The idiom is, prevention is better than cure, and so it's through leveraging the experiences of other people that you are able to expedite your success by benefiting from, like I mentioned, my mentor told me, benefit from the mistakes that people have made before you, benefit from their advice. And so I put this together for everyone so that they can benefit from that advice.
So let me jump on that, Sheikh Bradford. So guys, this is the giveaway that I was talking about, and Sheikh Bradford has very generously made this available to us. He's just launched this. He's going to make this available directly from his site, which is right here, joebradford.net/mail. And it's, like he said, 7 rules for financial success. I was reading this yesterday. I think for any Muslim entrepreneur, not even Muslim, just any entrepreneur, I think this is critical. What are the minimum things that you need to know, and what are the important things that you need to know about achieving financial success, things like balance and family life and all of that kind of stuff. Your commitments, your responsibilities to yourself, to your society, etc. There is just gems of information on every page. So great book, and on top of it all, it is free. So grab this. Let me stop the screen sharing here. So grab this while, let's see here. Grab this while it's available, and definitely take advantage of it. This should be like, your homework for this week. So, and we'll post a link to this in the groups as well. So a couple of other things, Sheikh, I want to just bring up, and then I think we can wrap it up. We're coming up on the hour.
Sure.
One big thing that I really want to talk about is, alhamdulillah, you are very connected to the community nationwide, obviously a lot more here in Texas since you live here. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that you do. And I know you do a lot of work with students. You also do a lot of work. You're passionate about the refugee plight and status. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are you compassionate about? What gets you fired up?
So, I've always had, kind of one of my personal goals is to correct some of the misconceptions and misgivings that Muslims have with charity and zakat. So I wrote a book, Simple Zakat Guide, to try and clarify that, because in working with Muslim communities, I found that we actually neuter ourselves. We inhibit ourselves and are unable to meet the needs of the most needy in our community because of the incorrect management of our communal funds, our communal sources of wealth. And so I work a lot with masjids and trying to help them understand how they can leverage their wealth and manage it wisely. And one of the things that I've done is I've been very, very active in the refugee plight over the past year or so. And that is, with Interfaith Ministries of Greater Houston, I helped them organize a program called Eid for Muslims. And what we did is we instead of just having Muslims give zakat al-fitr and then just say, oh, hands off, I've given zakat al-fitr. There's a sister here in town, Nahala Zakaria, who was instrumental, and her and a few other people asked me to join them. And what we did was we said, okay, we have lots of Muslims that want to pay zakat al-mal or zakat al-fitr, and it's Eid time. Why don't we do this? We'll pre-purchase food stuff, housing amenities, basic necessities, toys. We'll get kids to make Eid cards, and then we'll bring families together, the same families that donated. We ask them, come down to our workshop, put together a basket that has everything that this family can need, have your kids go upstairs and make colorful cards to greet them, and then go and deliver it yourself. and really see your charity in action. And I think that, you know, that hands-on idea is missing in a lot of Muslim communities, and we don't feel we don't feel the pain of the needy because we don't connect ourselves. You know, many of us, we live in suburban areas. We don't see the less fortunate if they show up at our masjid, you know, because our masjids are, you know, zoned industrial or zoned business or something like that. They're not even connected to neighborhoods, so you have to have a car to get there. And so one of my goals has been to get Muslims back in touch with those that were needy, because they're not a burden upon our society. They're actually the reason why we're successful. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, إِنَّمَا تُنْصَرُونَ بِضُعَفَائِكُمْ. You are only given victory because of the weak amongst you. So the measure of success of a community is how they treat the less fortunate amongst them. Do they lift them up or do they push them down? You know, think about it. So many people come. I have one of my best friends here in town who's a very successful dentist. He took in a refugee who was a dentist in his own country and was unable, he didn't have the platform to be able to be successful here. And so he took him, he had him come and work in his business. He paid him, he helped him through school. Now that guy who was once a refugee, who had, you know, $0 to his name and no property, mashallah, owns a very large house. All of his kids are going to school. They're fully paid for. And he himself has now sponsored 4 people to do exactly the same thing. He's put 4 dentists through school now that were in his situation, all because of this one person. You know, reminds me of, you know, when some of the muhajirin came from Mecca to Medina, they had nothing. They, you know, I believe it was Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who was told, you know, someone said, I'll give you half. His brother from the Ansar said, I'll give you half of my wealth and I'll get you married. And he said, I don't need any of that. You know, just point me to the marketplace. And by the end of the day, he was given the platform and he was able to leverage that. So, you know, I think that, you know, we're a nation of, you know, unless you're one of the First Nations, you know, that popular, we'll say American Indians, but that's incorrect, right? Unless you're of the First Nations, you're of the native people of this land, then you are a refugee, not an immigrant. You're a refugee because you're leaving something for something better. And so it's our responsibility to help those that are most needy amongst us.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're just coming up to the hour. And let me just change the camera here. So a couple of things I want to share with everybody. First of all, thank you so much, Sheikh Brad, for an hour with us. I think there was a lot of great information. I hope everybody takes the time to watch this. I know it's during work hours. A lot of people can't make it, but we've been recording this and we're gonna make it available, and so you can watch it after. But a lot of key takeaways from here about just building a community of entrepreneurs working together, relying on each other, asking each other's questions, looking to people who have been there and done that, and then sharing and giving back, right? It's about taking, but also giving back. Very, very important. And whatever you give comes back to you automatically via partnerships and all of that. We have a lot of really, really exciting things coming up. This is just kind of a little taste of some of the things that we have coming up. So I've been talking about offering a private label course, and you know, I kind of put that in the group to see if there was an interest. I wasn't sure because, quite honestly, it would be something extra that I would have to do. Alhamdulillah, my business is going really well, and that's what I try to focus on. But that's kind of my way to give back to others. And again, I think there's some selfish reasons for me to do it as well, which is partnerships. I know that if I offer a course, there will be partnership opportunities. Sheikh Bradford actually is really excited about it, and I'm really grateful. He wants to take the course, so Sheikh, I definitely appreciate that. I think, you know, not only can I maybe teach you a little something, but I think I could learn a lot from you, even in that course. So, so there's a private label course that I'm 95% sure I'm going to do it. Again, I just want to gauge and make sure that I've got enough people to do it. I got to gauge my time, and if there's only 2 people, then it's probably not worth it. But if I can get at least 30, 40, maybe 50 people, and the Sheikh approached me and he said, "Man, I got plenty of people. Just start the course." So inshallah, that's coming up. I think similar to what other groups have done. There's some very successful strategies. Maybe taking a trip to China, all together. I think would be absolutely a wonderful opportunity where all of us can get together. We can all go visit Chinese mosques. We can all pray together. We can all go and increase our business by visiting and manufacturers over there. I think that would just be, from a business, from a spirituality, from a friendship, I think these are amazing lifetime kind of experiences. So we're talking about these things, and I'd love to see some feedback on that from the group to see who's interested in these kind of programs. And the Sheikh is also he's going to be beginning his venture into the Amazon business, which, like I said, I'm helping. And that's part of, leveraging each other's strength. I rely on him for his financial and spiritual knowledge, and he's going to rely on me a little bit for my Amazon knowledge, which I've attained by learning from others. And all of this, I think, extends way beyond just the Muslim community. I've had great people that I've learned from, and I didn't distinguish or look at whether they were Muslim or not. And I'm sure the Sheikh would agree with me on that this is a religious neutral thing. All the principles that we talked about today, we can learn and share and encourage each other, and we all benefit, all Muslims, non-Muslims, Christians, whatever it is. So I've got great partners who are of other faiths. And again, I try to apply the same principles that we talked about across all of my partnerships and all of my networks. So just to wrap it up, private label course coming up soon, inshallah. Sheikh Bradford's PDF book on the fundamentals of financial success, the 7 rules. Grab that. I'm going to post the link. That should be a mandatory reading for entrepreneurs, Muslim entrepreneurs who want to start their own venture. China trip, sourcing, wholesale deals. There's just, again, so much coming up. And one of the things that I'm looking for is I'm looking for people who want to be partners. I'm looking for people who want to step up and either be partners or volunteers or help with social media, etc. There is a lot going on, and obviously I can't do it all. And some people have already stepped up, and alhamdulillah, they're beginning to work with me, but there's always room for more. All right, thanks again, Sheikh. I'm going to make the links available. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and inshallah, we will catch you on the next webinar in about a week. Happy selling.